My name is Amira Webb and I am participating in Challenge 2017. I'll be speaking to you briefly about the unit circle. So, to start, I'm going to point out the X and Y axis. This is the X axis, and this is the Y axis. The X axis represents cosine, and the Y axis represents sine. The radius of the unit circle is 1 radian. Therefore, this point is 1, 0, because it's on the positive side of the x-axis, and this point is -1, 0, because it's on the negative side of the x-axis. This point is 0, 1, because it's on the positive side of the y-axis, and this point is -1, 0, because it's on the negative side of the y-axis. Now we're going to move on to angles. As we all know, the degrees of a circle add up to equal 360 degrees, which we write right here. We also know that a straight line is equal to 180 degrees, half of 360. Half of 180 is 90 degrees, which is here, and this angle is 270 degrees. These four lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, represent 30-degree reference angles. A reference angle is the shortest distance to the x-axis. So, since here we start at 0, and this is 30 degrees, it's a 30-degree reference angle, the distance from 0 to 30 is 30 degrees. Here, this is 180, and we know this is a 30-degree reference angle, so the distance from 180 minus 30 is 150 degrees. This one, 180 plus 30, is 210 degrees. And this one, 360 minus 30, is 330 degrees. These four lines are 45-degree reference angles. So, my name is Amira Webb and I am participating in Challenge 2017. I'll be speaking to you briefly about the unit circle. So, to start, I'm going to point out the X and Y axis. This is the X axis, and this is the Y axis. The X axis represents cosine, and the Y axis represents sine. The radius of the unit circle is 1 radian. Therefore, this point is 1, 0, because it's on the positive side of the x-axis, and this point is -1, 0, because it's on the negative side of the x-axis. This point is 0, 1, because it's on the positive side of the y-axis, and this point is -1, 0, because it's on the negative side of the y-axis. Now we're going to move on to angles. As we all know, the degrees of a circle add up to equal 360 degrees, which we write right here. We also know that a straight line is equal to 180 degrees, half of 360. Half of 180 is 90 degrees, which is here, and this angle is 270 degrees. These four lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, represent 30-degree reference angles. A reference angle is the shortest distance to the x-axis. So, since here we start at 0, and this is 30 degrees, it's a 30-degree reference angle, the distance from 0 to 30 is 30 degrees. Here, this is 180, and we know this is a 30-degree reference angle, so the distance from 180 minus 30 is 150 degrees. This one, 180 plus 30, is 210 degrees. And this one, 360 minus 30, is 330 degrees. These four lines are 45-degree reference angles. So this is a 45-degree angle. This one is 180 minus 45, which is 135. This one is 180 plus 45, which is 225. And this one is 360 minus 45, which is 315. Next, we're gonna do the 60-degree reference angles, which are these four. So 60 degrees from 0 is 60. Then 60 minus 180, 120. 60 plus 180, 240. And 60 minus 300, 60 minus 360 is 300. Okay, and these angles can also be converted into radians. In radians, as always, we start at 0. And the way I count in radians is by using pi over 6. I count by pi over 6, but I skip over the lines which would have the 45-degree angles. So I start pi over 6. We skip over this one. Then we go 2 pi over 6, which is actually reduces down to pi over 3. Then this one would be 3 pi over 6, which reduces to pi over 2. This one would be 4 pi over 6, which reduces to 2 pi over 3. Skip this one. This one would be 5 pi over 6. And this one is 6 pi over 6, which reduces to pi. This one would be 7 pi over 6. Skip this one. This would be 8 pi over 6, which is 4 pi over 3. This one would be 9 pi over 6, which is 3 pi over 2. This one would be 10 pi over 6, which is 5 pi over 3. Skip this one, and this one is 11 pi over 6. And this one would be 12 pi over 6, which is 2 pi, which is a full rotation around the unit circle. Next, we are going to fill in these lines, the 45-degree lines, in radians. The 45-degree lines in radians are, we count by pi over 4. So this is pi over 4. This is 2 pi over 4, which reduces down to pi over 2. It's 3 pi over 4. 4 pi over 4, which reduces down to pi, like we have. 5 pi over 4. 6 pi over 4, which we already have when you reduce, equals 3 pi over 2. 7 pi over 4. And this one would be 8 pi over 4, which reduces down to 2 pi. Now we're going to plug in the values for sine, cosine, and tangent. The way I remember this is I use an acronym, A, S, T, and C. I remember it by all students take calculus, but it actually means all values in the first quadrant are going to be positive. So right next to positive, I write sine, cosine, and tangent, because they're all going to be positive. Negative, there's none. Right here, only sine is going to be positive, so I write sine. For negative, I write cosine and tangent, just so I remember when I'm filling in the actual values. This one, only tangent's going to be positive right here, but sine and cosine are going to be negative. And here, cosine is going to be positive, and sine and tangent will be negative. We know that all of the values are going to be the same. The only difference is going to be where the negative is. So sine of 30 degrees, which is your y value, as you know, it's going to be 1/2. So we know that on all the blue lines, all the y values are going to be 1/2. Right here, 1/2. And right here, 1/2. But we also know that here it's going to be positive because it says all values are positive. Sine is going to be positive here, so that's correct. Sine is going to be negative here, so it's going to be a negative 1/2. and sine is going to be negative here as well. So it's going to be another negative 1/2. Cosine of 30 is root 3 over 2. So we're going to fill in the same thing just like we did. This one's root 3 over 2. This one is root 3 over 2. But this is positive. This cosine is going to be negative. So it's a negative right here. This cosine is going to be negative, and this cosine is positive. Both sine and cosine of 45 degrees is root 2 over 2. Root 2 over 2. So we're going to fill that in all 4 quadrants. And we know here they're both going to be positive. Only the sine over here is going to be positive, so your cosine is going to be negative again. Your cosine is going to be negative again over here, cosine and your sine. And only your sine is going to be negative over here. Lastly, at 60 degrees, they just switch. So your cosine of 60 will be 1/2. And your sine of 60 will be root 3 over 2. Right here, 1/2. And root 3 over 2. Right here, 1/2. And root 3 over 2. And right here, 1/2. And root 3 over 2. Okay, we know which ones are going to be negative and which ones are going to be positive. So cosine negative, cosine and sine are negative. Right here, just sine. Okay, and our values here, right here, we already know our sine and cosine because we filled them in the very beginning. Now we only have to do tangent. Tangent of 30 is going to be root 3 over 3. I memorized that because 30 degrees has the most 3's. So root 3 over 3. This one is going to be 1. Tangent of 45 is going to be 1. Tangent of 60 is just root 3. Right here, tangent is undefined. And over here, we do the same thing like we did with sine and cosine. So it's going to be root 3. Tangent is going to be root 3. This tangent is going to be 1. This tangent is going to be root 3 over 3. Tangent's negative over here, as we see. Negative, negative, negative. Tangent over here is going to be 0. Same as over here. And then tangent here, we color-coded the line, so we all know it's going to be root 3. This one's going to be 1. This one's going to be root 3 over 3. And tangent is positive over here, so we just leave it. This tangent, like up here, is undefined. And as I said, we color-coded it, so this one is going to be root 3. This is going to be 1. This one is going to be root 3 over 3. And tangent is negative, so we just put a negative in front of all of them. And that's your unit circle.